1, 2, 3.
While our weekly shows are edited to time for broadcast on public TV and community radio, we offer to our members and podcast subscribers the full uncut conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters.
Under an onslaught of cuts, militarization, and the reversing of this country's even slow moves toward economic and ecological common sense, it is hard to visualize a big, bright future for everyone right now. But talk to students of this moment, and they'll say that what we're going through isn't exactly a surprise. It is the product, rather, of a system, and that is not going to be solved by tweaks around the edges or even electing one new leader, but needs total overhaul if humane life on a functional planet is going to survive. If that is true, then resistance to fascism, say, is only part of what is called for in this moment. The other part is vision. And not just pie in the sky imagining, but right here, right now, experiments and practical pathways out of today's status quo. The People's Network for Land and Liberation, or PNLL, was formed with exactly that agenda. The network is a multiracial, multiethnic consortium of 6 community-based organizations, each of which is doing politics and economics differently in real places across the U.S. right now. What are they finding, and how are they doing it even in the midst of a crisis? That is our question. Today we're joined by guests from across the PNLL network. Edget Betru is an attorney, activist, and coordinator of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. Betru is also a board member of Community Movement Builders, a member-based collective of Black people based in Atlanta, Georgia. David Cobb is a PNLL staff person and co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. In 2004, he was the Green Party presidential nominee and served as the campaign manager for Jill Stein's 2016 presidential run. Blair Evans is also with us. He is founder and executive director of Incite Focus, a production and training lab based in Idlewild, Michigan, a historically Black enclave and resort town known as the Black Eden. He's designed and launched more than half a dozen Fab Lab centers, which are MIT-backed initiatives that are right now bringing digital fabrication, think 3D printing and more, to people and places whom our current economy has historically shut out. The labs are helping just about anyone make just about anything better, which is just what we need in this moment. So I am so glad to welcome all of you to this program. I don't know where to start, but let me start with you, David. What is on the top of your mind and your heart as we begin this conversation?
First, Laura, thank you so much for how you framed this conversation, because we know we are in an ecological crisis. It's not coming, it's here and accelerating. Fascism is not coming, it's here, but tightening. And capitalism as we know it cannot solve this problem because capitalism is this problem. So what's at the top of my mind is the confidence I have in the People's Network for Land and Liberation as community-based organizations rooted where we live, work, play, and pray, with a program to not just describe the problem, but a vision to not just survive, but to thrive. We've got a path forward, and we're eager to share it with you and your viewers.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. What about you, Edget? What's on the top of your mind, on your heart as we start to talk?
Well, I thank you also for that framing, because I think it's very easy for us right now to be caught in fear and paralysis because of what is happening all around us. But as a mother, I guess I link this to a birthing process. You know, yes, the old world is dying and decaying and destroying everything in its way. But really, we are also at the same time witnessing the birth of the new, and that's going to be painful and bloody and violent as childbirth is as well. But it's really also like the opportunities to build upon what we have practiced for generations and generations, which is relying on each other, working together, working with nature and the earth. To really create a solidarity economy that's co-created, that is regenerative and sustainable.
I love what somebody once put it. It's not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb. I've always hung on
Yes.
to that. Coming to
Yes.
you, Blair, what would you say is sort of burning on your mind and in your heart as we begin this conversation?
Really, I also appreciate the framing. And I think the key thing for me is, really understanding that there's a way to build an alternative pathway forward, another pathway for prosperity for people. And I think, a concrete understanding that that's actually possible can shift people's mindset around how to deal with this. Obviously, we need to live until tomorrow. So you've got to resist some of the things that are going on, but we also need to really build the alternatives. And happy to and interested to explore that with you.
I mean, I love it. I mean, we've heard people talk about the challenges of fixing the plane midair, but you guys are actually talking about making a new plane midair. There are 6 members of this network, David, in vastly different places, in different circumstances, involving different and distinct sorts of people and practices. What's the connecting tissue?
Well, the connecting tissue is an analysis specifically around a 5-point program, which I'll invite Edget to describe. But I want to take just one moment to underscore Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Neo-Confederacy. Then Community Movement Builders, which is a national chapter-based group, but Atlanta is their chapter headquarters, which is 500 million people and probably heart of the entire Southeast. Then we go to Wellspring Cooperative in Western Massachusetts, which is literally half folks from Central and South America and half poor working class white folks. Then Cooperation Vermont in the Northeast Kingdom, 95% white and exclusively rural. Then cut across to Michigan, Black Eden. Then Native Roots Network in Western California in the far north coast, an indigenous-led grouping of trans-tribal, multi-ethnic people. The point is, this experiment is really 6 experiments at once, united around a 5-point program. And I'll invite Edget to talk about what that 5-point program is.
All right. So the PNLL 5-point program aims to address really undermining the foundations of the current extractive capitalist system that is grounded in the control and ownership of the means of production, right? The private ownership of land, the exploitation of labor. And so our program in its stead aims to decommodify the land so that we have access for food production, for housing, for all of the things that the land provides, right? We have community production, which means everything from growing food to using traditional and modern digital technology to produce the things that we need. We are incubating and supporting the development of workers' cooperatives so that we can learn how to work together to not only produce what we need, but engage in direct democracy so that we are making our own decisions about not only our work, what we're making, and how we use it in that community. And very importantly, we always incorporate education, because without the critical understanding of why we're doing all of these things, it will be very easy to undermine all of our work. And finally, we incorporate art and culture in everything that we do. And that's just, from our ancestral knowledge and practices to creating the new and making it all beautiful.
Well, often people say they're going to outline 5 points and they get to about 3. You did it. 5, beautifully laid out. I appreciate that. Coming to you, Blair, I had the great pleasure of visiting you there in Idlewild in rural Michigan. And I know that's just one place of focus for you, but to put some sort of flesh on the bones or paint some pictures for people, how would you describe what you're doing there at Idlewild and how it reflects those principles that Edget just outlined?
Yeah, Idlewild, well, first thing, all of the nodes are earnestly involved in integrating all of these pieces, because without all of them, the whole process kind of falls apart. Idlewild is focusing a lot on anchoring the community production piece, because we have people here that's an area of specific expertise. But we're taking a lot of the historic resources that are in Idlewild and converting those into community land trusts operated by worker co-ops, Also building community production center where we can actually have additional worker co-ops, and that's collectively owned in terms of the lands and the co-ops, producing goods for use in the community by people, their families, and community members, and also for exchange for those things that we would like to be able to purchase. Idlewild's history has a lot to do with arts and culture, and so it's a natural to be able to embed a lot of these principles and represent those in music festivals and like that we have here. So I'd love to unpack what some of the community production pieces are. We have, as I said, been stewarding a lot of historic resources here just because we wanted to make sure they stayed in a community that gives us an excellent opportunity to transition those into collective ownership because we were just holding the fort down. But we also are building new systems, like we have a 60-acre campus, which will be a good anchor for community production here in this area. So our approach is a combination of the traditional and historic aspects of Idlewild, but also building what the next 100 years of Idlewild will be about at the same time.
Let's talk about what brought each of you to this work. You've talked sort of in the abstract about the problems with our systems, but why you, this work right now? Let's start with you, Blair. What brought you to this work in this time?
When I was growing up, it seemed like this was a multi-generational problem. And, we got the baton handed to us and we planned on handing it off to some other folks afterwards. The nature of the challenge has accelerated over a period of time. So it's critical at this particular point in time with us, not providing the social foundation that broad swaths of people really need while blowing through all of the ecological and planetary limits simultaneously is an extremely bad combination. And so, well, I grew up in Detroit in a very active family and community. So, between my church and the community organizing and the like, it was what you did. It wasn't something I thought about because it was just part of the fabric of the universe when I was kind of growing up. Later on, a lot of that, teaching about institution building and the necessity of working within community was just a natural part of things. I went off to do a lot of technical training, but always in the back of my mind was how are these tools to be able to provide greater leverage to those efforts. And so this is
And the boom and bust history of that city of Detroit was probably a teacher too.
absolutely.
Let me come into you, David. Why you? I mean, you've got a history in Green Party activism, but this takes that to another level, it seems to me. But why did a little David Cobb perhaps find his way into this work today as an adult?
Well, Laura, anybody who knows me, I am a proud and unapologetic mama's boy. And my mama and my mama and my papa who raised me taught me a lesson as a little boy, and that is there's enough to go around as long as we share. And for me, that made sense to me when I was 5 years old. It makes sense to me now when I'm 63 years old. There's enough to go around as long as we share. It's just as simple as that.
And what about you, Edget? How did you get into this?
I guess I'm a grandma's girl. So my family is from Ethiopia, and I grew up in Ethiopia. My grandmother was just one of those people that was very involved in her community, and we would feed once a month. We would feed anyone and everyone in the neighborhood who needed food. And then my family migrated to Tennessee. And in my mind, coming to America was, the land of milk and honey. Everybody was going to have everything. And I was shocked and horrified because my church went to deliver groceries and basic toiletries to people maybe an hour away from where we were living. And there were children there without shoes. There was, still people who didn't have real indoor plumbing. And this was white and Black communities. So from that point on, I realized that there were those who have and those who have not. And there were a lot more people who did not have than who had. And I just, I was always committed to doing my part to change that.
The work that you're all engaged in is not just an homage to the legacy you come from, although clearly it is that. And it's not just individual projects like some of the ones that we've reported on this program in the past. It is about a network. And I'd love you, David, to talk about not just the network and how it operates, but one of the sort of ecosystem projects that you're very involved in, which has to do with agriculture in the Massachusetts area, the Wellspring Harvest Network, to help us see how the collaboration amongst all of your projects makes a difference.
As Blair said, every one of our nodes are involved in all of the different things, but you're correct to lift up Wellspring if we want to talk about the height of what we're doing in terms of food production. And that is in Wellspring, the third largest indoor greenhouse in the state of Massachusetts is operated as a worker-owned cooperative by the Wellspring Cooperative, one of about 10 co-ops, an already existing network of co-ops that are showing that we can meet our needs for food, housing, everything at once. And the Wellspring Cooperative is a perfect example. And I hope Emily Kawano will be able to talk to you about what they're doing there.
Well, tell us more, though, about how that system works.
Yeah, so what we have is an ecosystem, as I said, of about 10 different co-ops. They are all in different ways meeting individual needs. The greenhouse, though, is a very large, again, it's the third largest greenhouse in the entire state. It is owned and operated as a worker-owned cooperative that is within the ecosystem of the Wellspring cooperatives, and Wellspring is just one of the 6 nodes. The point I'm getting at is we could zoom in on any one of our 6 nodes and see an example of what it actually looks like to put all of this together. Food, housing, education, etc.
You're pulling a lot together there in Atlanta, Georgia at Community Movement Builders. For people that don't know about you, what can you tell us? Some may have heard of and seen reporting on this program about the Stop Cop City movement, but they probably don't know about your work with cooperatives, including, did I read a CMOS cooperative and an aquaponics project?
Yes, please check out Community CMOS.
So what does that look like in practice?
So it's a project where we have workers who actually process the CMOS, package it. We are calling.
Wait a minute. Just roll back a minute. You are growing CMOS in Georgia.
We are not growing it. We have allied communities who are also cooperatives in Belize and St. Lucia. And we source the CMOS from there, but it is here in Atlanta where it's cleaned, processed, packaged, marketed, and distributed, right? And that's really where we're trying to get all of our nodes and all of these cooperatives to get to a place where we have full supply value chains that are outside of this extractive system, that are providing decent jobs for our community, but also producing things that we can actually consume and nourish us.
What do we do with CMOS?
You take it, it's a supplement. So it's a nutritional supplement, and it has all the minerals and vitamins you could ever, want. And I'm glad also that you brought in our work around Cop City, because it's the model for our organization. We fight the institutions that are in our communities that are not serving us. And instead, we build ones that we are controlling. So that means for us, it includes a school, a full-time school called the Malcolm X Academy in Sacramento. It means an after-school program in Dallas. It means a farm where we're actually growing food, and we have a food program where we distribute groceries to the community. So, and we are not that unique. There's literally thousands of folks doing these kinds of projects and mutual aid work. And when we confederate those, if we can connect those and organize ourselves so that we're taking up more and more and more and more space, we can push out that old system and replace it with one that better serves us.
And we should remind people, Cop City was the initiative to build a huge police training facility on what was protected land in an area of Atlanta that was going to displace people and land and trees. Huge conflict. And we did some reporting on it, but there's much more that people can find online. This show is made possible by our viewers and listeners, not corporations or advertisers. So join our member supporter honor roll by going to lauraflanders.org/donate to contribute. That's lauraflanders.org/donate. Thank you. Coming to you, Blair, you have talked about how your projects speak to many problems at once, and also how they alleviate many of those problems at once. Can you explain how it works, and also how you see digital fabrication as changing some equations here?
Yes, I mean we're in a period of acceleration into these kind of polycrises, but we're also in a period of exponential explosion in capabilities in a lot of technologies. And we have access to and know way too much to be doing so poorly, ecologically and practically. So one of the key aspects with digital fabrication, which is moving forward very rapidly, is the ability to flexibly use what you have to produce what you need. And so that means being able to refashion, add value to things. It doesn't have to be commodity, global supply chain, uniform materials that go through a huge capital intensive factory process. You can flexibly take something and program the digital fabrication capabilities to refashion that in a different way. But one of the critical things also is we have a real ethical framework about sourcing things and not having unintended consequences or side effects in supply chains, which can be very environmentally damaging and damaging to people. So not only can we make things, but we can make things that make things. We can design and build our own equipment that can then use locally sourced materials, hyper localizing the supply chain to then to produce the things that we need. And so by becoming familiar with what a couple generations ago was normal, which is using what's in your environment to create what you need, we've been so disconnected from that, that reconnecting with that just helps us become better people and more full. But again, being able to kind of understand how we can stop feeding the monster that's consuming us and actually disconnect from that process and use what we have is a key capability. I mean, you can do these kind of things, and people have for tens of thousands of years without digital fabrication. But in our setting right now, given how many people are on the planet, the material resources and the like, we need some leverage to be able to do that effectively. And it's also the case that everyone doesn't want to spend 80% of their lives doing that specific providing for yourself. But if you can spend 30% of your life, that's reasonable. And then I can do the other things that are important kind of along the way. So it's just a...
What sort of things are you making right now there in the digital fabrication labs?
One of the things
and what are they being used for?
Yeah, in Idlewild area, one of the things that is a dominant focus for us is housing. Actually producing housing that has low total cost of ownership, very energy efficient, and allows flexibility as we used to generations ago to be able to kind of modify and expand things as family circumstances grow and change. So person doesn't have to go from a starter house and then move to another community when you have kids and then move to another community when you're an empty nester, but actually maintain your social connections and have the physical environment adaptable enough so that you can stay put and continue to move forward and not have to go through the economic or social trauma. So housing is huge. It is a major part of what people spend their time working for dollars to pay for. And so environmentally, it's impactful. In terms of people's time, it's impactful. And in terms of social continuity, it is. So that's a significant focus for us. And we're collaborating with local universities and the like with that also.
When we met there in Idlewild, Blair, you were on your way to visit another member of the network, Native Roots. can you paint a picture for people of that project, which does root itself in such long history and tradition?
Yeah, and that's a good example of how we all kind of reinforce our efforts. You know, for a lot of people, it's convincing folks that food doesn't come from a grocery store, water doesn't come from the tap, et cetera, right? You know, we can have control of our own things. Native Roots Network has a history of using what's in the environment in ways that allow them to produce things that are useful and important to them. And so it's a matter of just adding a tool to the toolkit and not changing a whole philosophical perspective on how one ought to live life. So they have a significant amount of land that they've been able to recapture, partly in collaboration with PNLL, and are looking at how to use the things that can be grown and sustainably extracted from the land to create the durable goods that they need along the way. So that's a wonderful collaboration between the historical knowledge that you are part of a place and you can use the things in a place, and then adding tools, and some other people, you know, can leverage that in a different way and just learn what that philosophy is about to be able to pivot.
Thank you for that. David, coming back to you, I think people are probably getting very excited and enthused and feeling encouraged by everything everyone is saying, but this work isn't easy and it's not happening in a vacuum, and we are in very tough times. So how do you find people's receptiveness to these ideas at a time when many might be thinking, as you said earlier, or someone did, I just want to get through today?
Well, Laura, look here. My daddy was a junk man, and he taught me something very valuable, and that is, it is very easy to sell a drowning person a life preserver. And more people are coming to awareness that the ecological collapse is accelerating, that the promise of how America is supposed to operate was always a lie. It was always racist, sexist, and class oppressive. So we are finding that more and more people are eager to learn from us, just as we are learning from them. I want to point out, Laura, that 5-point program that Edget so brilliantly described, there are thousands of examples of those happening individually in lots of places, but we do reckon that we put it together in a particular way. We like to say that the People's Network for Land and Liberation has a special sauce, but it ain't a secret sauce. We share our recipe with everybody. So if anybody is inspired by what you're hearing from us, please hit us up. We want to learn from you. We want to share with you what we're doing, and we want to collaborate. We're not just build up the People's Network for Land and Liberation, but propagate out these ideas, because we'll know that we're successful when we have supplanted the extractive power over dominated capitalist system and moved into an ecologically sustainable, racially and socially just society. We're playing for all the marbles, Laura.
All right, I like it. Edget, coming to you, the story that you're all telling so beautifully and cooperatively, if I might say so, reminds me a lot of what I found on a visit to the Mondragon cooperatives in the Basque region of Spain many years ago, and people can find that episode in our archives. What I was reminded of there was that model also, which grew to create some of the biggest co-ops, biggest companies in Spain, grew out of fascism, a fascist moment, the fascism of President Franco under the dictatorship after the Civil War in Spain. How do you square this forward-looking work with the resistance to this fascist moment in your work and as you look around?
I think the folks that are doing this, what we would call mutual aid type work, coming together to collectively meet our needs, also understand that sometimes that means we have to protect the work that we're doing. We have to protect each other. And we are right now, we're witnessing brilliant examples of that in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and in communities throughout the country. We understand that it's not going to be a matter of, oh, we have this lovely, beautiful system over here, leave that one alone. We understand that as the system implodes on itself, there's going to be a lot of violence. But we have, all of our peoples have lived through those times in the past. And what's important is that we do what we can to protect each other, to build what we want to build. And, we will go on. We will go on. It will look different. But I think the benefit of a network like the People's Network for Land and Liberation is that we can support each other, we learn from each other, we share resources. And when that is multiplied and expanded all across the country, all across the globe, there's nothing that can stop that. There's more of us than there is them.
What are some of the biggest challenges, Edget, as you do this work?
I think the challenges for me, from my perspective, is that we've been colonized in our minds, not just externally, but in our minds. When something breaks or I need something, I think, do I have money to be able to go buy something new, right? And so this involving people in day-to-day meeting their needs through a different way, through thinking, hey, who in my neighborhood knows how to fix this? What about the library, the lending center that the Community Production Center has for tools? Maybe I could go get that. So it's really that shift in consciousness that I think needs to happen, that's going to allow for this new economy to emerge.
What would you add to that, Blair, in terms of the challenges?
No, I agree. I would just expand on that last point a little bit. I mean, a major part of what we're doing is helping people actualize and creating better people, which is what we need. That's kind of the bottom line. But you're not able to kind of grow into what you can be unless you're able to fully participate in what's going on. And if all you're doing is a knee-jerk reaction, getting somebody else to fill the voids because you don't know how to do a lot of things and you don't have access to what it takes, then you kind of stay stuck. So I think, a major part of what we're trying to do is kind of self-provisioning, but in the process of actually living a fully lived community, we all grow to the point where then we can be more capable in the process. So I think that's the accelerator.
Do you find that young people, even just having the experience of living in a place like Idlewild, Black community with deep history, incredible resources you're adding to them as you speak, changes them, just the experience, even if they're only there, as most of them are, just for the summer, for a festival or for a show, or maybe a workshop with you?
Absolutely do. And old people. There's a lot of people, it's like, people phrase it a different way. I can feel the energy. I can feel the echoes of the ancestors. You can feel a vibe and a function in the community, which has a lot to do with being culturally safe and having an organization which allows you to participate in a way that you feel that you're a first-class part of what it is that's going on, which is very novel for people. It's amazing for young people. And I grew up in this place. My grandparents started coming up here in the 1920s, so it's just been a part of what I knew. But when I see people who've been introduced at an early age or at a later age, it is amazing. It's like, wow, and let me pause and reflect, because I had not considered that something like this was possible.
There's a Terrence Howard movie called Idlewild, which does not depict Idlewild, but does conjure a little bit of the spirit. David, coming to you, this is all fine and good, but usually there's a point at which money is involved. How are these projects actually funded?
Well, look, first and foremost, we have to say that all of our nodes are champions at grassroots fundraising and traditional philanthropy. Like, each of the 6 nodes are already basically quality star community-based organizations. But the People's Network for Land and Liberation is also come together to create something unique. We're calling it the Butterfly Impact Fund. It is a explicitly post-capitalist impact investing fund that we go to people of wealth and say, hey, if you're looking for market rate returns on Wall Street, we not your folk. But if you are interested in a transformational approach, let us show you with objective metrics that show how many people we're feeding, how many people we're clothing, how many people we're employing, actually show you a path forward, and you will take much lower rates of return, what we call regenerative return, and instead of the market rate returns, then we invite that kind of investment, because our investment is not just in our survival, but the ability for them and their children and grandchildren to not just survive, but to thrive. So the Butterfly Impact Fund, much like the butterfly that flaps its wings can, across the continent or across the globe, create a storm. That's what we're aiming to do.
And how's it going so far, dare I ask?
Well, I got to say, we're raising millions of dollars already. And where our plan is to raise and deploy between 10, 50, 100 million in the next decade, all with the explicit purpose of dismantling this racist, sexist, and class oppressive society and creating a regenerative power with society where goods and services are being produced and distributed in fair, ecologically sustainable ways.
I can see people writing checks right now. Sounds good. Thank you all. This has just been a fantastic conversation, and we could keep going for a long time. But David, you've brought me to a place of sort of imagining a future. And, you know, we always ask at the end of these episodes, what's the future the story that people think the future will tell of this moment? I want to ask you, you know, what's the future you see as you do this work, the future that you are working for? Do you have a picture of it in your mind, Blair?
I do. And it's one where you have a more horizontal distribution of, I mean, it's going back to villages with some high-tech kind of support, right? So we're not dealing with these very, very, very fragile, highly vertical systems. We're dealing with people who know how to use what's in the areas that they're dealing with to provide for their needs. And there may be specializations that you exchange back and forth, but you're not being held hostage for your basic needs of life through, you know, supply chains that you don't control. So I guess what I see it as are groups of people who are living together in a more coherent and cohesive way that are collaborating with other groups that are doing the same thing on a more network distributed horizontal basis rather than this highly vertical basis.
David, what about you? What's the future your heart's longing for?
It is a return to the ecologically balanced world that existed before empire, before settler colonialism, before white supremacy, before capitalism. Laura, this is our birthright. We're supposed to be living in a way where we are stewarding Mother Earth and she is succoring us. That's how we're supposed to live. And the People's Network for Land and Liberation is proving that we can do it right here, right now.
What about you, Edget? Is it about returning in your mind?
I think it's a combination of returning and embracing the best of our past with the creation of the new, so that we can have flowers and clean streams and time to enjoy them and time to enjoy each other.
So I'll now ask you the question that I do ask all of our guests, which is, what do you think the story is the future will tell of this moment? David, let's start with you. What will the future say about us?
That this generation went through one of the most brutal transformations that humans have ever experienced, and we came through better for it.
Blair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that we found a way to survive one of the most traumatic periods in history. And you know, the cliche of building back better, we actually figured out what that meant and actually got about the process of doing it as more than a catchphrase.
And what about you, Edget?
I think we'll say, I wish I hadn't spent so much time afraid and stressed. I wish I had known that we were birthing the new and creating this much better place that we're in now.
Oh, love it. What a great place to end. David, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was my pleasure.
Blair, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for engaging us in the process, and the whole Idlewild community thanks you for the visibility and exposure.
Can't wait. And Edget, thank you.
Thank you for having us and giving us an opportunity to talk about our work.
I thank you all for your work and for spending this time with Laura Flanders and Friends.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the full conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters. Please join our members now by making a one-time donation or by making it monthly. All the information is at lauraflanders.org. And thanks again to all of our member supporters.